the muscular brute known as Spec, in a single night, went from a steel-hard giant to a frail withered skeleton. Having tasted defeat for the first time, his body was aging at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the cause of all this had happened not long before. Hanayama Kaoru and Spec had engaged in a life-or-death duel. Spec never played by the rules. His methods were vicious. He actually took an entire handful of bullets and forcibly shoved them into Hanayama Kaoru's mouth, then made him bite down and detonate them. A fully enraged Hanayama Kaoru sent Spec flying with just a single punch. Meanwhile, back at the police station, the chief was furiously chewing out his men. Not only had they failed to keep watch over the dangerous convict Spec, but he had even stolen the bullets right out of their service weapons. And right at that moment, Hanayama Kaoru showed up at the station entrance, dragging a battered Spec behind him. Even though Hanayama was a Yakuza, the chief still gave him the highest level of respect, and even offered to arrange the best possible medical treatment for him, and have officers personally escort him home. The chief knew better than anyone that this time he owed Hanayama a massive debt. Just as an officer got Hanayama into the car and was about to drive off, no matter how hard he pressed the gas, the car would not move an inch. Looking back on it later, that officer still felt his blood boil. He turned around and saw something he would never forget. Spec, who had been barely breathing moments ago, had somehow escaped again, and behind him lay a pile of downed officers. The reason the car could not move was because Spec had lifted the entire vehicle off the ground, then violently flipped it over. Hanayama crawled out of the wrecked car, and Spec stomped down on him, sneering and saying he could have killed him earlier if he had gone for the kill. Hanayama only had himself to blame for being too soft. With that, Spec grabbed a baton and started beating Hanayama relentlessly, but even as the baton bent out of shape, Hanayama barely seemed affected. Just as Hanayama got up to counterattack, Spec suddenly pulled out a pistol and fired multiple rounds into his joints. For Spec, this was never a fight, it was a slaughter, and any dirty trick was completely justified in his mind. After emptying the first gun, he instantly pulled out a second one, with only one thought in his eyes. He had to take Hanayama down right here. Spec's massive foot pressed hard against Hanayama's face. Before long, Hanayama stopped moving completely, as if he had lost consciousness, but Spec was still not satisfied. He grabbed Hanayama's head, ready to land the final shot, but in that very instant, Hanayama seemed to see the figure of Yujiro Hanma. He snapped back to his senses, and bit down, shattering the pistol in his mouth. The bullet whizzed past his torn cheek. Hanayama grabbed Spec's ankle and hurled him to the ground, as if a surge of adrenaline had kicked in. He was back to full strength instantly. What followed was brutally hard to watch. The gap between the two was like a world champion beating on a grade schooler. Hanayama was genuinely furious, because he had come within an inch of death, and right then, Spec suddenly covered his eyes, and tossed out a flashbang. A blinding light and deafening blast exploded instantly. Under normal circumstances, anyone would have been completely incapacitated, even Hanayama when temporarily blind, and his heavy punch missed completely. Spec took the chance to circle behind him, wrapping both arms tightly around Hanayama's neck. That chokehold was perfectly executed, and seemed nearly impossible to break, but Hanayama's strength had already surpassed all logic. He slowly pried the arms apart, then grabbed hold of Spec's arm. Legend had it that Hanayama's grip strength was terrifying. He could easily crush a playing card, leaving perfectly clean fingerprints behind. When that kind of force was applied to a human body, Spec's arm burst apart instantly. He stared in disbelief at his own wound. The flesh around his elbow was almost completely gone, but this was far from over. Hanayama then turned his attention to Spec's leg. The excruciating pain wiped the smile off Spec's face for good. He fought back wildly, and jammed his entire finger deep into Hanayama's ear. But Hanayama just raised his hand, and firmly grabbed Spec's neck. The outcome was already sealed. The battle was over. Hanayama roared at the sky, proclaiming his victory. Afterwards, Spec was rushed to the hospital. His body was shriveling up like a deflating balloon, rapidly wasting away, and after doctors examined him, they discovered that Spec's real age was that of a man already on death's door. Without that insane willpower holding him together, he finally reverted back to what he truly was.